Well, hey, staff and key servant leaders, thanks for sticking with it, watching this third video. We've covered what is the What's Next initiative in the first video. We've covered the card in the second. And in this third one, really want to give you some pointers at how to interact at the tables. Really, this is deeply rooted in kind of our guest services values, our plumb lines, kind of our hope. And so I just want to get right to it. So if you are a staff member, if you're an adult spiritual formation staff member, we're not going to have the kiosk through the month of April. We're going to focus on the What's Next push in the middle of our foyer on the Midland campus. Again, start here for Odessa. But if you're at either of those locations helping people, whether you're a staff member or a key servant leader, we want to help people to understand that this is an exciting time in their life. Our energy should reflect that. We want to invite them into really to be bold and take that next step, because ultimately, again, coming back to the point, coming to the table, this is more than information. This is us kind of making a connection with them at the table, being a guide for them. And so a couple kind of pointers is that we want to look people in the eye. We want to introduce ourselves and then ask them their name. If we need to repeat their name, if you want, as it might help you remember it. And then through the duration of the conversation, again, we want to call them by their name. We want to make it personal. In some small way, we want to kind of affirm their value, affirm their God-given design, and that they are a soul, a person. Again, we don't want to just communicate information. We want to thank them for being bold and taking this kind of risk of connecting. We don't want to just answer questions. We want to engage in a conversation. We want to be intuitive. We want to communicate clearly. We want to avoid Christianese. And so remember that as you're interacting with people at the table. We have to remember that our tone is important. These people, as they come up to these conversations to the table, these people are not an inconvenience to us. We are called to serve them through this conversation and helping them to determine what's next for them, to use experiencing God language. Where is God inviting them to join Him in this faith family? And so tone is deeply important. So really, that's kind of a summary of really at the table. Now, that kind of fleshes out, though, in our 5 guest services plumb lines. Really, we kind of have this kind of value that we are all guest services, because the idea of biblical hospitality in the scriptures is a combination of 2 words that means welcoming of strangers. And so at the heart of the gospel, the good news of Jesus is this idea of welcoming strangers, or hospitality. And so really we teach these 5 plumb lines with our guest services team, and for at least the month of April, you're an extension of that. But as a staff member, we're always that. And so this kind of is brought to bear on our time at the table. And so the first plumb line that we talk about is that the gospel message itself, it's offensive, and so nothing else should be. When they come to our table and we have that communication with these folks at the table, we want to remove any offense that could get in the way of them taking a next step, because ultimately the message that they hear, the gospel, is offensive, and we want to do whatever we can to remove anything that might cause offense, be a hurdle for them. And so again, the gospel is offensive, nothing else should be. The second plumb line, as you see here on the screen, is the why is more important than the what. In the end, the why of What's Next is to help people take their next step, to join God, to embrace, to make adjustments in their lives to what's next for them as they pursue what God would have for them in the month of April. Excuse me. In this What's Next series. So again, the why is about connection. It's not so much about information. It's making a big place small. Plumb line 3 is everything speaks. Now this is an incredibly important plumb line. So the way that we look, our dress, our hair, even maybe the way that we smell, our clothes, whether or not we're looking at a phone instead of looking people in the eye, or talking to other servant leaders rather than having a posture looking for people to have a conversation. All of that speaks, which is really just a term that everything speaks phrase comes from Walt Disney. And so for us, we need to be cognizant, not fearful of what we are doing, but cognizant of, did we take a shower? Do we stink? Does our breath stink? Do we have the Stonegate welcome shirts on? Or are we looking at our phone when we should be looking at people? Are we talking to one another when we should be outwardly facing? And so again, everything speaks, especially when we have this potential moment of helping people take a next step with Jesus. The fourth plumb line is that we are just deciding to make outsiders insiders. Again, these people at varying degrees could be outside of belonging at Stonegate. They may feel like they belong, but they're just attending. And what we want to do in and through this what's next is to almost treat people as if they were already a part of this faith family, maybe before they even are. And so again, we want to do whatever we can to make them feel home as a part of the family. And again, it's much more than just having all the right information. Ultimately, people don't really care about the particulars if they know that they can trust that person to point them in the right direction. And then the fifth plumb line for us is that the first visit should set up the second. And so what this is their experience at the what's next area. Again, start here in Odessa, middle of the foyer in Midland, is their first visit to this table. Is it going to set up their second as they continue to come back? Are they going to find trustworthy people who are pointing them in the right direction? Or are we doing things that cause them to go, I don't know if this place is for me? Again, we don't want to walk around in fear. We want to be cognizant of that. Again, this is the type of guest services, hospitality culture that we want to have at both of our campuses and all of our venues. If in the fact that people ask about childcare, because we live in a region where some people are moving here for the first time and they don't know anybody, and so to join a group they need childcare. Right now, childcare is full on Sunday and Wednesday nights. I think I know Sundays for sure, and I know Diana and Casey and the Next Gen team is working hard to build that team up, and we're going to be working with them as the adult spiritual formations team to find a solution. But in the end, we have childcare reimbursement that people can take advantage of in that regard. So really, that's kind of what we hope at the table. Again, each and every person has a next step that's coming up to the what's next, a table, or who fills out a card, and we want to help capitalize on the Crowds at Easter, the Experiencing God series, to point people in their next step. And so thanks if you're a servant leader, non-staff serving at the table, or if you're a staff serving at the table, or those who are following up through the cards. Just want to say thank you, to understand that you're helping people in a moment where they're trusting God's invitation, and we want to be there to support them. So thanks again. If you have any other questions, you can ask me, Reed, or any of the adult spiritual formations staff, specifically the ministry leads, as to what the next steps or what is next push is all about. Thanks for watching these videos.